Welcome to the Master Your Mindset and Metabolism podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Dunlap, creator of kellydunlap.com. I am a mindset and metabolism specialist who helps women reprioritize their health, balance their hormones, and reboot their metabolism so they can regain their energy, finally lose the weight, and feel confident in their own skin. I help women break up with the start-over syndrome, all or nothing mindset, get them off the diet wagon so they can create a consistent plan for a sustainable, healthy lifestyle free of diets. In this podcast, we will talk about all the things mindset, metabolism, the role our hormones play in all of this, and how to reboot your mindset and metabolism so you can finally step into your new empowered life. Thank you so much for being here and pressing play. Now let's begin. Well, hello, gorgeous. Kelly here. I am so thrilled to share a lovely conversation that I had with my dear friend, Sandy. Sandy is an amazing gal, and we have so much in common. It's kind of creepy how many parallels we have throughout our personal and professional life. It's actually pretty cool. We are both a part of the same mastermind, and we serve a lot of the same community as far as what we do in our coaching businesses. And I love having conversations with women that are like-minded and in the same, type of business, because it's just so refreshing to hear their stories and how they got started and, where they're at now. And it's super cool because Sandy shares her story about how everything started, her ups and downs. And just like with anything, I always talk about what leads to the thing that leads to the thing that leads to the thing. And it all happens for us. And she talks about her whole career and how things happened for her. And it's super cool. And then at the end, she talks about some of her practices that she does on the daily, and it's pretty neato to hear how her current reality is something that was once just a thought and a vision and a journal entry. So I am so thrilled to have you here and for you to meet the lovely Sandy Hartwell. So without further ado, here's the episode. Hey guys, Kelly here. I am so excited to introduce my dear friend, Sandy Hartwell. She is a women's integrative health coach, and Sandy and I are actually in the same mastermind with our awesome coach, Nicole Spencer. Give her a little shout out there. And Sandy and I have been in a kind of like a mini mastermind with Nicole, and we have found that we have a lot of parallels in our life, and it's really cool. So I had said to Sandy, I said, hey, I would love to have you as a guest just because I like to gab, and just have a fun girls conversation. So Sandy, welcome. I'm so happy to have you.
I'm so happy to be here, Kelly. Thank you for the invitation. This is fun. I love to gab too.
Yeah,
we're a good match.
Heck yeah. So, I try to limit these to an hour, but sometimes they go longer depending on, sometimes we can have some good topics. So Sandy and I decided that what we would do is we would chat about how she started in the business, and that we would just kind of go from there. And she, just like I, started out as a personal trainer, and I would love to hear more about your journey, and let's just kind of start from there.
All right. So the reason I like to tell my story a little bit, Kelly, is because I've learned so much about myself as a woman by reflecting back on it and looking at where I was versus where I am. And I think that's really important for us to measure ourselves against our own growth, right? The person that we have become despite all the hurdles that we have had to overcome. And so often we don't do that. We compare ourselves to somebody's highlight reel on social media, and we never measure up, right?
So true.
And I think especially for us as women, I just turned 58. So I'm in menopause. I'm there. I've arrived. Ta-da!
The good old menopause.
How do
You know
you
what
like me now?
I'm telling you, you know what I recently learned in one of my courses, and I was like, what? Like, I never knew this. But that menopause literally is a 1 day thing.
Yes,
It happens 1 day,
that's
but
it.
these symptoms are for like years. And I'm like, okay, this is crazy. I never knew that. Never
Yeah,
knew that.
yeah, yeah. And the symptoms are very controllable through
Yes,
natural
very.
ways in most cases. And that's the other thing that we don't realize. And it's like one thing affects the next thing, affects the
The
next thing. And
snowball domino. There is no question there. And I love how you brought that up about they're very controllable and how women, at least I know a lot of them that I tend to attract, my body is just doing this crazy stuff and I just don't know what to do anymore. And it's like it has its mind of its own,
yeah,
but they don't recognize, but that's where you and I come in, where you can control these things.
hmm
Stress management, your sleep
hmm
habits, the stuff you're eating. I mean, it's just mind blowing to me. You know what's also crazy to me is when I ask somebody if they're in menopause or if they know if they're in menopause, it's shocking to me that so many people don't know if they are or are not.
hmm right.
It's amazing.
There's
How could you
very
not know?
little information. I mean, there is actually more information now than there was uh, 20 years ago. A lot more information than there was when my mother went through it, you know.
Mm,
So the way that I sort of came into this whole thing, and
mhm.
I'll talk a little bit about how my vision for my business, how I serve women, has evolved as I share my story a little bit. But I spent I grew up the youngest of four. If I described my young life to you, it would sound like a fairy tale. I had three older brothers who all loved me to pieces. I had two parents. They both lived at home. I grew up in this great big, beautiful two-story brick colonial house at the top of a hill surrounded by farmland. We could see for miles and miles and miles. I had ponies and a dog and all the things. We spent summers on Cape Cod in a cottage growing up on a lake, and beautiful, right? Sounds
Mhm.
wonderful. But I there was my mother was a active alcoholic, and
Mhm.
by the time there was a lot of stress in her life too. And I think that's really important to mention here, because she was probably going through menopause at around the time that I was preteen.
Mhm.
And her mother was living upstairs, and she had four children, and she was sort of always, under the microscope of her mother, who was like, did the kids brush their teeth before school? Are you gonna let them go to school like that? Tons of pressure, not to mention cooking for four kids and the whole bit, right?
The whole home
Having a job,
operations manager role.
right? Making it look good. Being the wife of my father, who would have to, back then it was like, do you ever watch Bewitched? Where
Oh,
Darren,
twinkle,
so
twinkle, my nose. Yeah. Yeah.
right. So you just do this and it all looks really good. And she tried so hard. Her life looked beautiful on the outside, but she was just falling apart on the inside. And the story ends well, where, when I was 18, my mother got sober, and she lived until I was 56, 57. And we had a beautiful rest of our lives together, became very, very, very close.
Mhm.
Got to mend any wounds that were there. And, I just hope that I can become half the woman that she was. She just lit up the world and left it a much better place than she found it, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but so, coming up that way, I felt very invisible. And
Mhm.
the way that I tried to make myself more visible, or maybe hide, was just to overachieve wherever I could. Now, I didn't do that academically, I have to say.
Me either.
Um, I,
I was an
I,
overachiever in partying.
yeah, I did that. I did that. Um, and anyway, long story short, I went to work right away. I just wanted to get out of the house. I moved out when I was 18,
Mm-hmm.
and started working right away, collecting a paycheck, took on all those adulting responsibilities immediately. I got sober when I was 21, right? So just only had been of legal drinking age for a very short time, and found myself in detox for the first and last time. So I think I've been sober for, well, way more than half my life now,
Yeah, that's awesome.
which has been everything to me,
Heck yeah.
just being able to uh, just sort of adapt those, if you've ever read in any way, shape, or form, they're all basically the same 12 steps. They all come from the same place, but what a beautiful recipe for life.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
so I was able to, spend years incorporating those principles into my life, and it's made a huge difference on how I live, how I feel about myself. Those skeletons in the closet,
Yep. Yeah.
who cares? Nobody
Right.
cares.
Yeah. It is
No more
so
shame
true.
here. Yeah.
Right. It is so true. And if there's so many people operating under the shame, I'm not sure if you've ever heard of Dr. Gabor Mate, but I absolutely love him. And he talks a lot about like addiction and the coping mechanisms that create our identity. And I could so totally relate. Like, I was definitely the people pleasing party girl is what I, called myself. There is no question. But Dr. Gabor is amazing. And I actually, he's been around for quite a long time. I just recently learned of him, but I think that you would really enjoy him if you don't already know about him. There's a new book that he just released. It's called The Myth of Normal. And it's just about basically fucked up childhoods like you and I have had, where it seems like everything seems to be normal, but it's really a shit show and a mess,
Mm-hmm.
So totally get that. And, I have not walked the 12 steps. My sister, who is 10 years older than I, she did at 21 as well. And it was interesting because at that time, it was weird to me. Like she was 21, I was 11, 12, and she wanted to talk about what was going on in our home and bring it to light. And I was like feeling like, I don't even want to talk about it. Like, can I just plug my ears? I don't want to talk about this shit. Can we just hide this crap? Because that's kind of where I was. So the AA 12 step thing for me was just really icky because of the meaning that I applied to it back then as a child.
Yeah, sure.
But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because last year, or maybe it was the year before, I was watching the show Manifest, which I'm not sure if you know what that show is. And my husband and I were watching it. It's about this airplane that disappears for 5 years and they magically reappear. And one of the characters was going through this 12 steps and the sobriety thing and all this stuff. And he was on his 5th step. And when the 5th step had kind of was articulated throughout this process, I was like, oh my God, that right there is where unbeknownst to me, a lot of my freedom came from was working the 5th step, but not intentionally working the 5th step, not knowing it. It was, having the rough conversations, admitting, owning responsibility, apologizing, forgiving, all of that stuff. So I totally understand exactly what you're saying, how it's a magical way for you to kind of, stay true to your values and who you are. And, really kind of keeps you in alignment and such. So curious question. When you were 21, you said you got sober. When did you start actively drinking or partying or doing drugs, or what was it that you were doing?
Well, I would have to say that my first drug was fantasy.
Never even heard of that.
It's something that you do in your mind to escape your reality.
Oh, I'm like, okay. So, all right. So like literally, like, okay.
Literally fantasy. And I just had to go back and think about where I first felt the need to escape. And I don't know if I can really go back that far, but I do remember, at a very early age, probably 9, discovering NyQuil. And
Interesting.
yeah, and I would drink. I mean, my mother would buy NyQuil in the big ass bottles, and I
Yes, I
would
had an aunt like that would drink the.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that was me. I was that aunt. And so at 9, I kept it in my nightstand, and I drank NyQuil. And you know, I mean, by middle school, I was using weed every day, 7th grade, 6th grade.
No shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
And to me, it was normal, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I mean, that was like my first business.
That is so crazy. But I
It
love
might
how
have
you
been
just
more
said,
lucrative.
no, right? You know what is so funny? How you just said that was normal. And that's like, kind of like the Gabor Mate book, how it's the myth of normal, how we don't know what we don't know because we're just like, this is just normal. But the other thing too, I want to share before you move forward was that he talks about how we create these things, like how you said, the overachiever, that some will create this, how they are important, or they're the overachiever, or they are, what's the one word that he used? It was kind of like, not suave, but it was more like charming or whatever, so there's all these different like roles and these identities that we create out of the whole scenario that we are living in, which is crazy, or like becoming important. So it's like he was a baby, when he was a baby, it was during the time of the whole Nazi thing and all that stuff, and he was he felt abandoned, even though he as a child didn't know his mom was just trying to save his life. He struggled with this abandonment because that was the meaning that he had applied to it, that he felt abandoned, but it really was just out of love. It was just trying to save his life. So for all these years, he felt unimportant. So he says, what did I do? I went to medical school to feel important. Right. And so then as he grows in his profession, he feels importance from all of these people in the world, but yet he's shitty to his wife and his kids and all this stuff. And I totally can relate to that. And it's because of our background. We feel important to our clients. We feel important to, our audience that are listening. Right. But we don't feel important to our spouses, or we're not feeling like they look at us as important, so we're just like, oh, screw you. I don't even want to talk to you because I'm going to get this over here. And I could see where that totally happens. But anyway, not wanting to go way off the rails here, but just kind of wanted to bring that up. So you had a
we definitely assign those identities to ourselves, though, for sure. Yeah.
1000%, unbeknownst to us. That's what's mind blowing to me. But what I love is getting to this age where, like you said, who fucking cares about my shit show in the past? Like before, I would do anything to keep the lid on it, and
nobody's looking.
Right. Nobody cares.
It's so
and
true.
If they do and they want to judge, it's like, well, then you're not my person anyway.
Yeah. And who doesn't judge? I judge, not in a, I try not to judge in a way of attacking you, but it's how I've always measured myself in the world, by comparing, and so I think to judge is to be human.
Oh, it's definitely, there's no question there.
But, I think in terms of judging myself, I've judged myself unmercifully, and that's not fair. And so I've learned, especially over these past several years, just how to give myself a little bit of grace. And I'll get into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
But
sure.
Anyway, so just to backtrack, so one job led to another, and I found myself working these corporate jobs and getting opportunities just because I had a strong work ethic, just because I was always willing to show up, go the extra mile, learn, stay until I got the job done. What was
it that you did for a living?
So I did a whole bunch of different things. I wound up going to broadcasting school. I I got an internship at a radio station, wound up getting a job there. I was, you know, co-hosted a local rock radio station, and or radio show, and worked in nightclubs, and then I continued on, after I got sober, didn't work in nightclubs anymore. And so I got corporate jobs and just like sort of moved up from there, and got into sales and marketing.
Okay.
And so I worked my way into management roles. Again, always feeling like I didn't quite measure up because I didn't go to college.
Oh God.
And like
Same
I didn't,
here.
I
Yes.
always had that, I carried that stigma. Talk about stories that we tell ourselves. So I
Yeah.
never felt like I measured up or that I had to push a little harder. I had to work a little harder and prove myself. And so I did that for years and years. While I was working in nightclubs, I fell in love with a rock star, and we did that whole thing. I was living in Boston at the time.
Anybody well known? Anybody we know?
No, no, sorry. A local rock star, I should say, a rock star in my mind.
Gotcha.
Beautiful human, great guy, loads of redeeming qualities. We sort of grew up together during those early 20s years, and I got relocated to California. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to LA now. And he's like, well, I'll meet you there. Okay. So we actually were married at the time. And so he stayed here for a while and finished up college, and I moved to LA and did my career there. And I got moved there to take over sort of the sales and marketing arm of this company that was really failing. And long story short, they actually moved me out there to be sort of their hack person, right? So I got out there, and one of the very first tasks I had to do was to lay off about 50 people.
Yikes.
And it was probably the worst year of my life. It was really, really, really awful. I'd never done anything like that before in my life. They paid me a lot of money to do it, and it still wasn't, I mean, there is no money worth that. I don't know how people do that. But I don't have that kind of thick skin, and it just, it killed me. It nearly took me down. When that whole process was over, we parted ways, and I got another job as a temp for this biotech company. And I loved it there. It was like Christmas for me at this company. I felt like everything that they asked me to do, I was really good at, and they loved me and I loved them, and things were going really well. I got pregnant, which, by this time I was 38. And we have these fairy tale, I talked about fantasy as like a young person. I fantasized always about being a good parent. I always wanted a child. I never fantasized about like the husband or the house or any of that stuff. But
Smart
I always
girl. No, I'm just teasing.
It was like I always wanted the child, but I never really was stuck on the husband part of it, which was a good thing, because bringing this child into my life, there's nothing that will expose your life to you faster than having a witness, right? Bringing a third person into your world to watch you do your life.
Yeah. Oh, that's so well said.
When I brought this child into our world, I realized I don't know that I want to raise this child in this environment. Like I have settled for this for years. Um,
When you say
again,
settled for this, what do you mean by that?
so again, my husband had so many redeeming qualities. Um, and so did I. But we all have our defects. We all have our default behavior that we go to
Oh,
when
yeah.
the doors are closed and we're losing our shit at home.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was kind of the target of that, or I felt like I was the target of that. And sort of the last straw happened on my son's second birthday, and there was a bit of a explosion at home, and things came flying across the room in my direction while I was holding my child. And I just said, um, I'm going to go for a ride and I'll be back in an hour. You need to be gone
Mm-hmm.
for good. And that was it. And I, at the time that biotech company that I was temping for, they had hired me and given me a full-time job. My child was there. In daycare, which was incredible. So I could work really hard. I could work all the time. I could drop off my dry cleaning in the morning at work. They would wash my car while I was sitting in the garage. I could pick up dinner from the cafeteria on campus on my way to the daycare to pick up my son and come home with dinner and my child. And, you know, the whole while I had always been a runner, training for marathons and, like doing all the things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so my son was two, almost three now, and I got laid off from what was to be my last corporate job.
Okay.
So now
Things
I'm
get all the magical which is all this stuff, which was convenient, the car in the garage and all that stuff. You now
everything,
are like,
all my conveniences are gone. My paycheck's gone, and I'm the breadwinner of the family.
mm-hmm.
Um, so now I have no husband, no husband, no job, no family around me because I've moved 3,000 miles away from everything that I knew, and a 2-year-old. And we women know that there is nothing that will channel our internal Linda Carter
Yeah.
more than our child needing to be cared for in any way, shape, or form. And so I got a really nice severance package. And I thought, I gotta take care of my child. Can't afford daycare. I gotta have a job that will support us, and I gotta do it from home. And so everyone around me was like, you need to follow your passion. Like
Yeah.
fitness is your passion. People
Mm-hmm.
see you in the gym and they're like, hey, can you train me? I'm like, no, that's not what I do. So I decided to go get my personal training certification, and I
Mm-hmm.
did that, and I started my career, and I thought, I can't do this. I can't do this in a gym. I have to be at home working. And so I bought a house, built a gym in my house, and remember those, well, I think they're still a thing, Groupon. So I just decided I'm gonna give it away. Now I'm still living off my severance, so I'm okay. I'm gonna give it away. I'm gonna just be like, okay, 6 personal training sessions for $60.
Oh my
And
God.
and then
Yes.
when they come in for their 6 sessions, by the end of that 6 sessions, I thought they're gonna fall in love with me and they're gonna buy a package. And
Mm-hmm.
many of them did. And that's how I launched my business. And I never looked back.
Mm-hmm.
I never
It's
looked
amazing.
back.
So isn't it interesting? So always, comes back to people don't change unless they have to or they're forced to. And I love how you did follow your passion at that time, because my passion was always the secondary thing. So it was like I worked at Ford Motor Company, felt inadequate as you did because I didn't go to college, because I do, the men there, they were not bashful about telling me that. In other words, like, well, you didn't go to college. Who the fuck are you? And it was very, very amplified and very magnified in my brain already, and I would work until 5 o'clock, drive to the gym, teach aerobics. And it was like, oh, I was burning myself to the ground. I wouldn't get home till 9 o'clock at night. So kudos to you for actually taking the leap and doing the thing and starting your business at that time. So how old were you at that time then when you had launched your personal training business?
I was, well,
if he was 2-ish.
Yeah. So I was 40. No, I was 30. I was 40.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which I loved my 40s, by the way. I don't know about you, but I loved my 40s. That's when I
I
started
loved my 40s.
Step into my own and really started to clear up some shit.
100%. And I told myself I wasn't going to say that today.
What's that? Swear
Check
words?
that off. No, 100%.
Oh, 100%. Say it all the time.
Anyway, so yeah, I was 40. Yeah.
That's cool.
And I just made it work. But the interesting thing about looking back on that, I felt like my life was falling apart. And I look back now and think it was all just falling together.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was coming into place. That was the universe doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. Yeah. I hated corporate America.
Me too.
I did not fit
death
there.
To my soul.
I felt like it was death to my soul. That's such a good way to put it. I never fit in. I never wanted to. I didn't try hard enough to. I just didn't have it in me, especially once I became a parent. Like my perspective completely changed. I'm like, this is not important to me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't.
There was a quiz that I had taken several years ago, and this guy's name is Big Al something. He's literally is a little guy, and it's the color personalities. Yeah, right. And it's the color personalities. And I remember saying, oh my God, no wonder that felt like death to my soul. I think I was a green personality or something. And sitting behind a desk is death to that personality soul. So now it made the complete sense. I was like, oh God, now I know, I really recognize, but so you were like, oh my gosh. So the universe, it all happened for you, which is amazing. You started the business, you took a leap of faith, kind of gave it away, but then people re-signed and, all of that. So you've actually been an entrepreneur since you were young, like you said, in middle school, kind of like where that whole thing started. Mm-hmm. So then you were doing the personal training. And then when did that transition happen as far as like leading into more of the online space and doing what you're doing now with the integrative approaches, with women in coaching?
Yeah. So the online part of it happened about 5 years ago. And I had been working specifically with women, absolutely loved it. Like I loved sharing with women. I loved having them in my space. I loved the energy. I just felt so fulfilled at the end of every day, at the end of every session. People were getting results. It all was so good. But as I was changing, I went into menopause, perimenopause pretty early on, like shortly after I had Charlie.
Wow.
I started having symptoms like hot flashes, noticing a little bit of weight gain, and I couldn't get that baby fat off,
Yeah.
And my hormones were already starting to change. And so I got deeper and deeper into like the nutrition and let me understand what's happening with my body here, because my doctor was just like, well, you got to eat a little less and maybe run a little bit more. Like, marathon might not be long enough. So
God,
really,
yeah.
so I noticed a need, and like everything that happened sort of from then on in my life. It all happened very organically, and it happened out of need, either a need of my own, a need of my clients, or a need of my sons.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so I really got deep into the nutrition part of it, and studied the psychology of weight loss. Women, I started learning a little bit more about hormones and what happens to our bodies and how our metabolism changes, and
Yeah.
why we gain a little bit of extra body fat, and how our hormones interact with that extra body fat, all
Yeah.
the things. And the science was fascinating to me, and the psychology
Mm-hmm.
was even more fascinating to me.
Agree.
The sciencey things I couldn't keep in my brain, but the psychology stuff I could really relate to. And
Yeah.
so I grabbed onto that, and I started to evolve and just bring that more into my coaching conversations. And
Yeah.
people were like, this is more like I should be paying you as my therapist. I'm like, you
I
should be paying me
know.
as your therapist.
That's so funny. I
My
found
therapist
myself,
makes a lot more than I do. You should be,
yeah.
I need to raise my rates.
It was funny when I made my transition out of being in the big box gym as, personal trainer. I shortly before my exit, I did start noticing, it always starts with the interest within ourselves, right? Where we start to
Yeah.
pay attention to like, okay, and I need to be doing this, I need to do that. Then we start to share it with our clients. Well, I started noticing that these sessions that I would have with clients weren't being conducted on the exercise floor anymore. I was in the office with them, going over the nutrition and the behaviors. And like you said, the behavior piece is so relatable to us, especially, I think, because we both come from traumatic backgrounds and we both have done a lot of healing. But the science part, it's so interesting that you say that, because there was a difficult time for myself when it came to science. I could hear it, but I could never quite retain it. But then it was like Dr. Jade Tita came into my life, and that changed everything. I was like, you are
It usually
speaking to me.
does.
You are speaking to me. I can actually understand you. Holy shit. Or it was a combination of just being ready, as they say, when the student is ready, the teacher arrives, or however the statement goes. So you start getting interested in transitioning from that whole personal training piece, because let's face it, we start to see these patterns, and we start to see the same people coming in over and over again, up and down and up and down. And they come in and they're an emotional mess a lot of times, and not being judgy or whatever. It's just an observation that you start to see a trend with, it's just like collecting data. It starts to scream at you when, you see it over and over.
And as healers, we automatically go to, how can I help? Right. That's what we do. So I do know Dr. Jade Tita. I've
Love
been
him.
to his trainings. About one of the things is that I never felt at home in California. So I was there for over 25 years, probably closer to 30 years. And I never like completely furnished my house. I never had coffee tables or lamps. I had a couch, and I had a console with a big TV for my son. I had just what I needed. Never really hung stuff on the walls.
That's interesting.
And I just never felt settled. I always felt temporary. And I also said that when I got pregnant and divorced, I wanted to come back to where my family is. But my ex-husband was staying in California, and I didn't want to take my son away from his father. Sure. That was the most important thing. He's a great father, and we're very, very good friends. We had a very amicable parting of the ways, and I love him dearly. He's the father of my child, and I would do anything for him. And so I decided that when my son graduates from high school, I'm gonna that will be when I can move back, when he's 18, and then it will be my turn. It's finally going to be my turn, and I'm going to do this for me. I've nurtured, I nurtured my sick mother. I nurtured my career since before I should have been nurturing a career. I nurtured my child, my husband, my household, all of it. And, now my son's 18. he'll be 20 Friday. Both my parents have passed on. I'm thinking about retirement, and this is where women in my life are at this point. I mean, women are at this point in our lives, and it's like, what's left? There's no one left for me to nurture, really, but me. And so it's time. And so I decided 5 years ago that this is my plan. Like, I need a plan, but as a personal trainer working one-on-one with people face to face, I have to have a business that I can take back with me so that I can take care of myself when I move.
Yeah.
And so I found this amazing woman named Nicole Spencer, and she was just starting out her online coaching business, Authentic Conversion. And I met a girl at the Chamber of Commerce in my local town. She's like, you got to meet this lady. I'm like, all right. So I got on a call with Nicole and I signed up for her program. And I think that was the very first, if you go back and look at any of the very early first recordings of the
mastermind,
mastermind, or even, the course itself, you'll see me in those little videos there. And one of the ones that's really important to mention here is the one with Emma Churchman. And I think that she's just like incredible spiritual enlightenment coach, and she does beautiful work. I have so much respect for what she does. And I can remember in my first call with Emma on one of the mastermind calls, I just was like in tears. I'm like, I don't know how to create this vision. I just want to go home. I need to be able to do this and move back. And I got to pay for my son's college, and I got to have an online business, and I got to make it all happen. And I don't know how I'm going to do this, and blah, in complete and utter overwhelm and in a panic. Like, how am I going to do this?
Yeah.
So one thing led to another, and it just kind of all evolved. And I started my course, and eventually, slowly started doing things more online and a little bit less in person. And then COVID hit and everything went online, which was kind of a gift because now I didn't have to teach all my clients how to use Zoom. And
right.
Everybody knew it was amazing. I'm like, oh, Zoom? Yeah, I have it on my laptop. This is easy. Before that, it was like, I got to do what?
What do you mean? What is this? It's so funny.
How will I see you?
Yeah.
And so it all worked out just beautifully. And 2 years ago, my son was about to be 18, and I came home one day and I said, all right, I'm selling the house in May. And this was March, putting it on the market in 2 months. And they're like, where will we go? I'm like, I don't know yet. My son's like, well, I haven't graduated from high school yet. I said, I know, we're not going to leave yet. We're just going to sell the house now and get ready. And so I did. Sold the house for twice as much as what I paid for it, and rented a little townhouse for a year close by until my son graduated from high school so that he could figure out what he was going to do next. It was like the first step in the transition. During that year, while we were in the temporary place, I came back here with my significant other. I found a piece of land. We bought it. Our lease was up in April of this year, and I moved.
Yeah.
By myself. My son is still in California. My significant other is still in California. And my house will be ready to move into in just a few months here. And
amazing.
It is amazing. And, I was thinking we all have these moments, and I, not just as entrepreneurs, but I think as women, like we tend to get into our 50s and 60s and we're tired. Like I said, we've done all this nurturing. We feel like we've carried the weight of the world on our shoulders. And we decide, some of us at some point, that, well, maybe this is just good enough. Maybe this is my lot in life, and it's not so bad, and it's just good enough. And I say, hell to the no.
I agree. The
you
good enough
go
statement drives me nuts. This is good enough.
chase down your dreams. They are yours and they deserve to come to fruition. And the magic of that, you know what? My business never took off to make the kind of money that supports me building the kind of house that I just built.
Mhm.
Um, the thing is, Emma talks about your vision having to be clearer. Your vision of your future has to be more crystal clear than your reality is today.
Mhm.
And I mean with all the senses. You need to be able to feel it, smell it, hear it, taste it, dance in it, wake up in it, have sex in it. You need to be able to do all the things in your vision. And it has to be so clear that it's more clear than your reality today.
Yes.
And you have to have the confidence that your vision is happening. It is what you're moving toward, regardless of what's happening today, regardless of the fact that you haven't sold anything in a month. You're heading in the direction of your vision, and this day is part of that journey. And so,
I love that. That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I think
you're
everybody needs to
welcome.
hear that. And I loved hearing that today for myself, even because sometimes, we do find ourselves in this like, oh God, we can get caught up in fear if we want to, if we choose.
100, yes,
Yeah.
all the time. Fear is a natural thing, and it creeps in. It's what keeps our body comfortable and safe,
Yeah.
right?
It's a
It's
very
like, don't
moment
do
to
that. That's
moment.
scary. Stay here where it's comfortable and familiar and
Yes.
predictable.
Yes.
Don't move forward. That's uncharted territory. You don't know what you're going to encounter if you go down that road. And I say, let's go.
Yes.
Like, I was always that
Doesn't
person to
matter.
go down the wrong ski trail. It's like, I don't care if it's groomed. Let's check it out.
Yeah.
Um,
Kind of like Dr.
so,
Jade would say, weave your net, like jump and weave the net as you go,
yeah,
which is so true. It's like,
yeah,
be fearful, but do it anyway. And I think
yes,
that is definitely something that you and I had to do. We had to get comfortable with doing that kind of risk
yeah,
taking and things like that. And that crystal clear vision that you're talking about, like what Emma talks about, is so interesting how I don't want to say it's difficult, but it kind of is in the sense where it's like I actually have a separate coach that I hired specifically to help me with those visualizations, with being able to dream big. How do you I'm like, oh my God, my brain just feels so limited. I don't know how to go big. So kind of like when Nicole was sharing with us about how she went to that mastermind and that gentleman who was running it, and he said, oh no, that is too small. You need to dream big. And it's interesting how limiting our brains can be.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You're absolutely right. And and writing about, like, I found the interesting thing that I noticed yesterday, like my big aha moment yesterday, was
Mm-hmm.
my reality today is my vision of 5 years ago.
Which, oh, I just got chills. Holy God, I got major chills from that. That's
I'm
amazing.
in it. I
You're
don't
in
live in
it.
California anymore. My son has graduated from high school. He's off to college. My house is almost done. Like, I live here now.
Isn't that so
Um,
cool to be like, oh my God, I did this.
I did this. I did this, and I didn't do it alone, and I didn't do it without fear or without risk.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it has been a heck of a journey to get here. And what happens now is, what's my next big dream? You
Yeah.
know?
Yes. Like what's next?
Yeah. So
What's
I
next?
just keep free writing. Like, I'm
I was
looking
going to
at the,
say, what is your big practice? What has been your free practice? Like, what was the big practice that you did 5 years ago that got you where you currently are? Is it visualizations? Is it journaling? Is it meditation? Is it all of the above? What is your
all of the
main
above, all of the
suggestion?
above. So I have a pretty strict regimen that I uh, do, and it includes, um, first of all, it's really important for me. I've been very aggressive my whole life and felt like I always had to go get my own. I had to
Yeah.
hunt
That
it down and kill
masculine.
it if it was going to happen. I had to like go hunt it down and kill
Yeah.
it before I could have it. And I'm really trying hard to lean back into that feminine energy of attraction, of being more magnetic.
Yes, that
Um,
flow. And you and I, there's no question that we stepped into that masculine survival mode when we were children
yeah,
because that's what we had to do. We had to like survive.
yeah,
I know it sounds harsh and not sexy and that there's no
it's
judgment
not.
against our parents or family, but it
No,
is the truth. It's the
yeah,
truth.
yeah, yeah. And recognizing it and entertaining, dancing with that feminine energy has been a lot of fun. And so part of my morning ritual is I dance every morning, right? When I wake up, I do first thing I try to do when I open my eyes is I'm so grateful for this day. This is my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do a little meditation
Mm-hmm.
and then I dance.
I love the whole dancing thing. I love that. And when I started my fitness career, it was aerobics. And I think about that often. And it was like, that's where it was always my first love was aerobics. Why? Well, now I know why. It's because of the way
Yeah.
that it made me feel. It was like the
Yeah.
dancing. It was my dance.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And all that energy that we hold, we're very emotional beings. It's not a bad
Yeah.
thing. It's
Yeah.
just a thing. We're very, very emotional. And that energy and motion needs to move out. And when we dance and we swirl and we move our arms and we caress our cheeks and our
Mm-hmm.
hips and we move and it just feels good. It's such an awakening, it's such
Yeah.
a beautiful way to enter the day. Um, and then I sit and I journal.
So how long do you do dancing? So you wake up,
Like three
which
minutes.
I do the same thing as you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I express gratitude for like three things. And it's so funny because they don't really change that much,
It's
but I'm
okay.
just grateful for whatever, and then I do my little meditation.
Hmm.
But I love the dancing part. So just like a few minutes, kind of like more flowing kind of movement.
Yeah, I have a
And
whole
then you
soundtrack.
write. What's that?
I have a whole soundtrack.
I love that. And
Yeah.
then you go into writing.
And then I sit down and usually I'll go get my coffee at that point.
Okay.
And then I come up and I sit down in the same place under the same blanket and I pull up my beautiful journal and my fancy pen and I sit down with my coffee and I just write. I write about my dreams. I write about being thankful for the things that I want in my life as though they have already happened.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the vision gets really clear. It's like, thank you for these beautiful horses. I'm so grateful that I have these warm boots to go out in the morning to pasture and feed them and care for them and love on them. They're such gorgeous, strong, spiritual. I don't have horses. I don't even own the field behind my house, but that's my dream.
Mm.
And that comes
And that's
true.
what's coming. That's what's coming because
That's
you're
what's
writing about it.
coming because
Yes.
I'm writing about it. And the way that it's supported is by me touring the world and traveling,
Mhm.
supporting the book that I haven't written yet,
Yeah.
and flying first class and what that feels like to just be comfortable in my seat and
Comfort. Oh, that
have
is a
the
huge value, a huge
yeah,
value.
have the room and the space that I need to think and the people that I meet. Like I go there 100%. It is as though it happens in my day. It's very hard to describe, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm I go
You're
there very,
rewiring
very
your
quickly
brain.
now. Yeah, I
Yes,
go there
you've
very
rewired
quickly.
it.
It's easy. Yeah.
So it's like Dr. Joe Dispenza, which I love, by the way. And he always
Yes.
talks about what does he say? Something about the wiring and the firing. What gets fired together, wires together. And you have literally rewired your brain. You're continuing to do it every single day. And I
Every
love
day.
how it is a daily thing. And I remember in our mastermind, you had talked about that, how that was a very specific, regular process. And I remember you were saying, if you don't mind me sharing, that you had said, well, Nicole, I'm here. Like everything that I've envisioned, I'm here. So what is next? And that is where that right there, like what you talk about, that is where I have issues with too, where it's like, okay, well, this
How do I
big thing,
expand?
how do I expand that? Right. And so, like you said, it's just, it's almost like you got to go back to that childhood fantasy. Like you said, my first drug was fantasy. It's like you write out like as if it's a fantasy, but it's really not, because it's like, it's your reality that you're creating, which I think so many people have such a hard time wrapping their brain around it. Somebody could listen to this podcast and be like, okay, weirdo girls, which fine, whatever. But watch in a year, Sandy and I will
Try
be on
it
here
first.
and she'll be talking to me about her horses in the pasture and how this whole thing just transpired. And somebody came knock on her door asking if she wanted to buy the land behind her.
I'll be live from the barn. Oh no, so I've already in my visualization, I actually met the owners of the land already.
Oh my, I just got chills. That's amazing.
So I already met them, and I told them that when the house was built, I would invite them to dinner. Now, my dining room, my house is built as close to the property line as possible. And their 100 acres of field and woods is right there. So when you sit at my dining room table, it is all glass looking out onto their fields. So when they come to have dinner at my house, they will understand why it's important for me to have that.
Yes. Wow. I love that so much. Now, I don't think I asked her, maybe you had shared it in the beginning, but where is this house?
It's in New Braintree, Massachusetts.
Oh, Massachusetts. Okay. Got you. All right. Wow. Amazing. I'm excited for you. And I can't wait to, like, you got to share a picture of this dining room. This sounds awesome. Like, wow. That's
It's
so
amazing.
cool.
It's amazing. I can't go in there today to take any pictures because they're insulating.
Oh, gotcha. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I just, again, it is all possible. I think that the stories that we tell ourselves, just to kind of circle back to where we started, Kelly,
yeah,
those stories that we tell ourselves, question everything. We have to question all of it and say, is that really one of my core values, or is that something that I picked up along the way? Is that a belief of someone else's that I took on and never questioned? I think it all deserves to be questioned, and we deserve to chase down our dreams. And, it's scary to think about me leaving my favorite person in the whole world, my son, back in California. But you know what? He's good. Like, I've raised him to trust his independence, to trust his instinct, to make good choices, to be a good human, he's, and I trust him enough to walk away and know that he's going to
be okay.
do the right thing. He's going to be okay. And he is,
Yeah. I love what you said about how when you have a child, it's like this person that comes in that witnesses your life and every action, because they are true sponges, and what we do, they duplicate. Right. So I know for me, I can say this with a fact that I broke the cycle in my generational mess, right? I hate to kind of say it like that, but there is no question. So my children will not be duplicating any sort of childhood because they didn't experience like what I did.
Right.
Not saying that we're perfect over here, but there was definitely none of that. And I'm totally hearing the same thing with you. You know, that we made it very intentional, that we were like, that was just too painful, and I don't want to put our little humans through the same shit.
Yeah. And one of the beautiful things that happened was when I was shortly, I bought the house that I lived in after my father died. And my parents used to go to Florida together every winter. And my mother still lived in that big house up on the hill. And like I said, I'm in New England. And so it wasn't a good idea for her to be in that house by herself on the hill through the winter and that sort of thing. And so she used to come and live with me and my son in California for like 4 to 6 months out of the year, which was such a gift. Just
Wow.
that he got the very best of her. Like
Mm,
she gave him everything that she had in such
yeah.
a big way. And he learned so many incredible lessons from her. And so did I, and I just am so grateful that we had that time together and being far away. When I came back to Massachusetts, I always wanted to just like come back home.
Mm-hmm.
When I got here, I got this really big sense of depression.
Hmm.
And I thought, I don't think I have really experienced this before. This is kind of a new feeling for me. Um, and what I was hearing or sensing into was, you missed it.
Hmm.
Like they're gone. You missed it. And so I needed to speak that out loud and to sort of talk that through with some of my brothers. And they're like, oh, you didn't miss it. Like you've been coming back here with your son for 2 weeks every winter. You lived with mom and dad. You woke up with them. You went to bed with them. You
Mm-hmm.
had your meals with them. You shopped. You laughed. You watched TV at night. Like you did all the things. You didn't miss anything. We lived close by and maybe took it for granted that they would always be there.
Sure. And there's one of those stories that you were just talking about that
Yeah,
you're like, is that true?
yeah,
And you had
yeah,
to, verbally process it out with the bros. And they're like,
yeah,
no, that's silly.
yeah. Let me talk it out and get some perspective. And you
Mm-hmm.
hear a third person's perspective and you go, oh, you're right.
Yes.
I'm
And see,
so
that's the
glad.
thing, just verbalizing it,
Yeah,
talking about it. And so many of us for so long, at least I know for me, that was one of the things that was killing me, literally,
yeah,
was not speaking what I was thinking or that I was believing. And that was suffering.
yeah,
That was suffering. And I think some
yeah,
people do suffer from that just because they're like, well, I'm shameful to express this, or if I'm thinking this and I believe this and this must be true.
yeah. Or I'm suffering in silence,
Yeah.
Um, and I think, uh, that happens to women in menopause sort of at this time of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Also, because things start to change so much, again, it's unfamiliar. We're in a lot of pain. Um, Maybe our emotions feel out of control. We feel out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we don't act so much the way that we feel. Sometimes how we feel on the inside doesn't really get expressed on the outside.
Yeah.
But we feel crazy. I've
Mm-hmm.
heard people just say, I feel crazy. Like, I don't want to leave my house.
Mm-hmm.
And giving voice to that and shedding light on that and letting that out, like we can start talking about this. It doesn't have to be a secret. It is not shameful. And menopause is not a disease.
Mm-hmm.
It is it's a rite of passage.
Mm-hmm.
Like we are coming into the best of our years.
Yeah.
It's like the rest of our years can be the best of our years. And we just need to open up and say, this is the new me. This is how I'm showing up for this. If you need a little help with nutrition, sleep, stress,
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle, physical activity, what's good, what's not good, there are people like us who can absolutely help with all those things. And that will dampen
Oh
symptoms
God.
in very, very, very quickly. Things like writing, dancing, meditating, say no,
Oh, that's
saying
a
no
huge
to
one.
you so I could say yes to me. It's like,
Oh, that's a huge
ah,
one. That's
more
the
of that,
boundary, people pleasing stuff. And it's like, oh, it's freedom when
especially this time of year,
yes,
say no, delegate.
absolutely. Heck yeah. Oh my God. I'm all about the delegating. You know,
Yes.
it just cracks me up because, you're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, oh no, you hire that out. Like,
Yeah.
it's a no-brainer. But I get it. For some people, they label things as luxuries if they're hiring it out. Like, no, that's not a luxury. That's a necessity.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's call it what it is. Okay. Like hiring something out does not have to fall into that container of luxury. It's just all about recognizing the importance of your time.
Yeah.
And choosing where you put your energy, because let's face it, we have the right to choose. So
we do. Absolutely.
Well, this was a lovely conversation. I knew it would be an amazing time. And thank you so very much for being vulnerable, sharing your story, sharing all of the things all the way back from when you were a child up through, going through the corporate ladder and all of the things with your son. And I love the practices that you shared with the dancing, especially. I think I might add that in. I
love the dancing.
Yes. It is so important. It's that movement, and that's really
I tell
great.
my people all the time, women in my program, I'm like, you have to dance. Just dance a little bit. Like I was on a call last night with my group.
3 minutes.
One woman was like, I did 2 hours of singing and dancing today. I'm like, you go.
That's amazing. Wow. But I love how you just said 3 minutes. Like 3 minutes. I could do 3 minutes. I mean, people scroll for 3 minutes, like you could totally cover 3 minutes. The 3 minutes can change your life. So, well, this was a lovely conversation. I so adored this. This was a lot of fun. What we'll do in the show notes is we'll, put how people could reach you, contact you, find you, follow you, all the fun stuff. So I'll get that information from you.
Perfect.
But anyway, it was a joy and such a pleasure. And I really appreciate this conversation. So, all right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will make sure that I have all of the information to follow Sandy in the show notes. So, all right. Thanks again, Sandy.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you love what you heard, please be sure to share it with me by leaving a review. If you aren't already following me on social media, come find me on Facebook by searching Kelly Dunlap, or come join me in my Master Your Mindset and Metabolism Facebook group by going to kellydunlap.com/group. I cannot wait to connect with you on the next episode.